Let's do a quick review this week. I'm going to work questions 15 through 22. So 15 through 18 to begin with, it says write each as a decimal. Use repeating decimals when necessary. So we learn how to make this into a decimal two different ways. My first one is division. So I'm going to use that method for the first two questions. So if we can practice those. So 2 divided by 5. I'm gonna put a decimal at the end of the 2. I'm gonna bring it to the top. I expect my answer to have a decimal point. Now I don't see a number in front of the fraction, so let me put a 0 here. Now inside this house, I can put as many zeros as I want. I'm gonna go, how many times does 5 go into 20? Right, I'm gonna multiply 5 times something to get as close as possible to 20 without going over. I know 5 times 4 is 20. When I subtract this, I get 0, right? 20 minus 20 is 0. I'm going to stop once my remainder, when I subtract that, is equal to 0. My answer is 0.4. Okay, that was one way. Let's take a look at another example. Let's take a look at 1 divided by 8. When I bring my decimal up there, I don't see a number in front of the fraction, so I'm going to put a 0. And then I'm going to say, all right, how many times is 8 going to 10? I cannot go over. I know 8 times 2, that's more than 10. But 8 times 1 is 8. When I subtract this, right, 10 minus 8, it gives me 2. I'm going to stop once I subtract, then I get 0. All right, so let's bring us to another 0 here. How many times does 8 go into 20? I know 8 times 2 is 16, so that doesn't go over. 8 times 3 is 24. Okay, so that's too high. So I'm going to say 2 times. 8 times 2 is 16. When I subtract this, I get a 4. Okay, and bring an extra 0. How many times is 8 go into 40? I'm going to say 5 times, because 8 times 40 is, 8 times 5 is 40. When I subtract this, I get nothing. So there's my answer, 0.125. So I learned how to do it using division. That's one way. Another way I mentioned is make the denominator a 1 with zeros. So make it a 10, make it 100, make it 1,000, make it a 1 with zeros. I know I can make the bottom equal to 10, right? I can multiply this by 2. So let me multiply top and bottom by 2. So that gives me 6 over 10. 6 is going to be part of my answer. My 10 only has 1 0, so only one decimal place. Decimal place means how many numbers after the decimal point. Right? There's no number in front of the fraction, so 0.6. Now here, I'm just looking at the fraction, 1 over 4. Now 4, I could make it a 10, but it's not going to be that nice. So I can make this into 100 if I multiply top and bottom by 25. So that gives me 5 and 25 over 100. Okay. So let's see. 25 over 100. So my decimal point is going to have a 25 as part of it. The bottom has 100, right? So 2 zeros. So that means 2 decimal places. Now in front of the fraction, I see a 5. So my answer is 5.25. So questions 15 through 18 says write each as a decimal. Now questions 19 through 22, it's asking to write it as a percent. Now, one way I can do this, I can make it into a decimal and then move the decimal places to the right. Okay, so first, let me do that. One way I remembered, I'm just going to do the fraction 1 divided by 10. One way I learned was using division. Now, let me bring this here. My question is, how many times is 10 going to 10? But first of all, I see an 8 in front of the fraction, right? So I'm going to put an 8 in front of my decimal point. Okay, now I'm asking how many times is 10 going to 10? It goes in one time because 1 times 10 is 10. When I subtract this, I get nothing. So my answer as a decimal is 8.1 as a decimal. But now I need to move this as a percent. Move the decimal point 2 places to the right. If you need to add an extra 0 here, by all means do so. Now move it 2 places to the right. So it's going to give me 810%. All right. Using division again, looking at number 20, I'm just going to divide 1 divided by 4. Again, I'm just focused on the fraction. In front of the fraction, I see an 8. So I'm going to put the 8 before my decimal point. Now here, let's see, 4 into 10 goes in 2 times, because 4 times 2 is 8. When I subtract this, I get 2. Let me bring down an extra 0. 4 into 20 goes in 5 times, because 5 times 4 is 20. When I subtract this, I get nothing. So as a decimal is 8.25. Move the decimal 2 places to the right. So that's going to give me 825%. Let's take a look at number 21. Another way we learned how to do this was using the denominator. Use the bottom part of the fraction. Now, one way I'm like, I can make this, I can easily make this into a decimal first. I can make the bottom 810, right? So that gives me 4/10. But I would like to use this as a whole fraction already. Now, percent means over 100. So let me add a 0 on top and add 0 at the bottom. Technically, that means I multiply by 10, right? When I add a 0, that basically means multiply by 10. So I have 40/100. So that's going to give me 40%. Percent means over 100, right? For every 100. Let's take a look at question number 22. Okay, so I can make the top and the bottom 10, right? So that looks like 7 and 2/10. I would like my fraction to be a 100 at the bottom. So let me multiply top and bottom by 10. Basically, I'm just going to add zeros there. So I have 20/100. My answer is going to be 720%. You guys see the 20%, right? The 20/100. But the 7 in front of it, that means 700. And then the other 20, 720%.